What? One moment. One moment. This is very important to me. Okay. So, hey nerds, do you like aliens? I have always been, I don't know, very torn on the concept of aliens myself, if I'm being quite honest. Grew up in a family that strongly believes in aliens, but of course, when I became a teenager, I got super critical of everything and became a skeptic. But I've also seen and experienced and heard many things that make me go, ugh. Same shit with ghosts. You know how I am, like talking about ghost shit, like wholeheartedly believing in it, and then in the next episode, I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense because I don't think that was a ghost. Anyway, ow, piss inside me. I don't mean that. I don't know why I say things like that when I am startled. Good to meet you. I didn't plan an introduction, but we are going to talk about aliens. I'm trying to be topical for once. Usually, I get the idea to do an episode on something that is topical, and then I don't do it, and then it is no longer interesting to anyone. Luckily, even if I were, well, I mean, alternate universe me is pretty lucky, because even if I had fucked up and not gotten this episode, done, aliens are always fucking interesting, right? Okay, I was terrified of the X-Files when I was a child, because there was some alien stuff going on, and I was spooked. Quite frankly, I was rather spooked indeed. And if, 30 plus years of just my life, aliens being yeah, you know what I mean. Aliens are always topical. I have acquired a new canine. I, of course, still have Corndog. He just has a little sister now. She is silver, and she's a pit bull with a big ol' head, but compared to Cord, she looks so small. It's hilarious. She has tiny little stubby legs and a long... Let me see. Cauliflower. Hi, Corndog. Cauliflower. Okay, she's sleeping. She doesn't want to come. I'll show you someday. Maybe I'll put a picture on the video for you. So... she's rambunctious. She's only 8 or 9 months old, so she's still a puppy. And Corn's a grumpy old boy, but I don't know. So if there's a lot of noise, clickety-clacking of their necklaces, or them going, oh, or stomping around, that's what that is. And I will do my best to mute when they are noisy. If they are. They're being really chill right now. I think I turned all the lights off, and they're like, oh, it's bedtime. Very good. That's my personal update. Hitting the gym. Hitting the gym as much as possible. Ooh, I had a tooth removed. Speaking of aliens, do you want a personal story? Oh, I should just go into it. If anyone is interested in my personal story involving aliens and my teeth, I'll upload a short video of that and either make it a YouTube short or a TikTok or... shit, maybe I'll go into detail and post it on Patreon, so just the patrons get to know, and then you can be exclusive, and it'll actually give you a reason to be part of the club, other than my blooper reels. Let me know if you like my blooper reels. I think they're fun. I fuck up a lot, but I do one take the whole thing, unless I definitely fuck up, there's a bunch of beeping or something. My entire episode, every time, one take. I pause it here and then if I gotta pee or I need to get up for some reason, but I don't redo anything. So when there is a blooper, it means it was really annoying and it fucked up my whole take. But also that means a lot of the time my fuck ups end up in the final show, because I am too lazy to be editing like that. Okay, I feel like I fucking rambled. Oh yeah, almost 5 minutes now. Sorry about that. You want to talk about aliens? Okay, so when I decided to do the aliens, it occurred to me that there is way too much to talk about aliens, especially if I want to do my usual shit and dig into the science and math of it all. So this is going to be part 1 of 2. So I'm going to talk about the U.S. congressional hearing that happened on UFOs, or what do they call them? UAPs, that happened on July 26th, I believe. And then I will tell you my favorite and most interesting, in my opinion, UFO encounter story that I have found. Yeah, I explain why I picked it later. So let's do that. And then in the next episode, I'll talk more about how astrobiologists and stuff actually search for life on other planets. I did that as my final while I was in college, so I already know all that, and I was like, ooh. And anytime talk of aliens happens around me, I have to be the fucking super nerd about it and bring up shit like the fucking Drake equation and whatever, so I'm gonna do that at you next time. Unless something weird happens and, like, my tongue falls out. I just decide that I don't like computers anymore, and you can find me in the bog. Well, that's what I intend to do in part 2. I think there was something else. Anyhow, here we are. Get into it, I suppose, yeah? Alright. So, the hearing. It's throwing me off because I'm recording a lot earlier than I usually do, and it's a little bit lighter. I even lit a candle for ambiance, and it's not doing a whole lot because it's still fucking light out. Why won't it be dark forever? I miss the winter. I almost accidentally an Evanescence song. If you know, you know. If you were a 14-year-old goth girl in the early 2000s, you know exactly what I was about to say there. I found string. Oh my god, why is my brain working out a lot? It's making my brain go. I need medicated. So the hearing. 3 former military officials stood before the U.S. Congress on July 26th to discuss unidentified flying aircraft and the necessity for making information about these crafts open to the public. The primary reason for this hearing was to argue that regardless of what these aircraft are, they could pose a threat to national security, and therefore all documentation and information surrounding them should be readily available to the people and especially to organizations with an interest in national security. Right? So, the hearing wasn't necessarily about aliens, right? It was about national security and a possibly known national security threat. Keep that in mind. That's one thing that I think a lot of people kind of went over their head is if they didn't watch the hearing or if they didn't read a bunch up to it and they're like, oh, they're doing a hearing on fucking aliens. It was a little bit more boring. Their justification for the hearing was more boring than actually being like, oh, there were aliens. Yeah, anyway, okay. The hearing was held by a House Oversight Subcommittee and was straight up about UFOs, actually referred to officially as unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs. The UFOs, or UAPs, because national security, you know what I mean. The 3 military officials provided their personal testimony concerning unexplained objects, sightings, files, and matter collected which relate to these UAPs. The witnesses were David Grush, an Air Force veteran and former member of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. I didn't know that they existed until this. Ryan Graves, a former Navy pilot, and U.S. Navy Commander David Fravor. Refreshingly, lawmakers that were a part of the committee agreed that these objects are of bipartisan concern. Seriously, one of the only things that has come up that hasn't been turned into a pissing match between the 2 primary political parties in this shithole country is aliens. National security affects us all. Some accused the federal government of trying to hide important UFO-related information from the public and even from Congress, but no one directly provided any evidence that the federal government has done so. However, one of the witnesses did repeatedly say that he didn't feel safe giving names or certain pieces of information publicly, and he would do so in private at another time. One of the main points made to explain the importance of the hearing was that the sheer number of reports and recorded sightings of unidentified objects in the sky warrants investigation. While countless UFO reports or UFO sightings or encounters with weird non-human entities from the skies are verifiably bullshit, there are many, many more that seem plausible and have been presented by trustworthy individuals. Ugh, brain. Many of the sightings could be balloons, drones, optical illusions, commercial airliners seen from weird angles by people who aren't familiar with them. Any number of perfectly rational explanations exist for the majority of these reports. The most concerning of these non-alien related explanations is that they are sometimes experimental military aircraft made or controlled by other countries. This means that whether these are alien aircraft from space or aircraft from another country, they are still a threat to national security. Like, either way. The Pentagon has said that they have seen no evidence that the UAPs are extraterrestrial, but they haven't ruled it out. So, I watched it, or as much as I could, while it was live on YouTube, on C-SPAN. And then, I don't know, I took a bunch of notes, but afterward I was like, what's like the most important stuff to say about it? Like, to really summarize the most interesting aspects of it. So honestly, what I did was I went to a bunch of news outlet websites, and I read all their stuff, and what I came upon was that pretty much everyone in the journalism world agreed that the most important way, or the best way to present it to people, is just to explain the 5 most notable claims that were made during the hearing. So that is what I have done for you. 1. That the government is absolutely in possession of UAPs. 2. Non-human biologics were found at a crash site. 3. Officials must establish a safe and transparent reporting process. 4. Stigma associated with sightings silences possible witnesses. And we will talk about this in the story I want to tell you in a bit. And 5. UFO spotted accelerated to supersonic speeds. Yeah. So, let's go over these claims a little bit. While watching the hearing live on YouTube, my fingers were a-flying as I tried to type out the best transcript I could, but I didn't watch the entire hearing. Like I said, I caught it pretty late into it. My dog is scratching himself. Hopefully I've got some quotes here from relevant parts that we can look at. So as for the first important claim, let's see, which was that, I have to pause it while my dog scratches, BRB. Back into it. Sorry about that. Dog scratching, then a train. You know how it is. So the first claim made in the hearing was that the government is absolutely in possession of UAPs. David Grush, a former U.S. intelligence official, was the one who put forth this claim. He stated that he had conducted interviews with 40 separate witnesses over a 4-year period, and during these interviews, he was told that the Pentagon has a program that is designed to collect and reconstruct crashed UAPs, which has been active for multiple decades. This tells him that the federal government is in possession of, at the very least, pieces of these aircraft. A major point of discussion concerning this program was, of course, the method of funding, which Grush claimed was done by misappropriation of funds. Claim number 2. The second most notable claim made during the hearing was also put forth by Grush. I should have looked up how to pronounce his name, because I heard them say it a bunch when I was watching the hearing, but that was like 1,000 years ago to my ADHD brain. I don't remember. That's why I took notes. So hopefully I'm not being a jerk here and fucking saying it weird. I don't know what anyone would expect out of me anyway. Okay. He said that non-human biologics, and I put this in quotes because that's the words that he used, were found at a crash site. He was clear that he himself had not personally witnessed any UAPs, but swore under oath that he knows multiple colleagues who have been injured by them. Belch. He stated that he has conducted interviews with individuals who had recovered non-human biological material from places where UAPs had crashed. He used the word non-human, not alien. This I found particularly interesting because, of course, non-human means just that. It could be fish guts. It could be a feather from a bird. It could be some crushed worms from under a chunk of metal. Like a monkey could have been wearing a pilot suit and been shoved in there by the Russians, Like, that would be biologic material from not a human. However, if something like that were the case, why would they not say monkey bones, or fish guts? The use of precise wording is what makes that strange to me, personally. That's what gave me pause as a person. When asked to describe something he had personally seen, he said, "I have to be very careful here. What I personally witnessed, myself and my wife, was very disturbing." A Pentagon spokesperson later told NBC News that his claims were false. So, take that as you will. Of course they'd say that, right? Claim number 3. Another witness, Ryan Graves, a former Navy pilot, made the point that officials must establish a safe and transparent reporting process for these sightings and events. Some lawmakers agreed that the federal government needs to establish clear channels to communicate the phenomena and information surrounding them with the military and the public. The military should put in place a comprehensive reporting process for such things. Graves told the panel that pilots in the military do not feel that they are being given enough information and that they are thusly totally unprepared to respond should they be involved in an encounter. He notes that not only military pilots have seen these UAPs, but commercial pilots have as well, and they also need to be properly prepared and to know what to do in those situations. Fucking fair enough, right? If it's happening all the time to a bunch of people, the people that it could happen to need to know what they're supposed to do about it when it happens to them, should it happen to them, Alright, claim number 4. Witnesses and lawmakers agreed with Graves, who pointed out that stigmas silence pilots who experience these events or see weird shit. They're afraid that if they report their sightings, they won't be taken seriously, and, more importantly, that they may face professional repercussions, which is compounded by recent government claims questioning the credibility of eyewitness testimony. Another witness, David Fravor, said out loud that he had never had any intention of discussing his experience openly for similar reasons. He stated that he only did so due to pressure from his colleagues. The Federal Aviation Administration has no method for pilots to make reports of this nature and instead sends them to civilian groups that are not considered credible and are almost always dismissed as crazy people and conspiracy theorists. And claim number 5. David Fravor, who I mentioned in the last claim, is a former Navy commander who claims that he and 3 fellow pilots witnessed a white tic-tac-shaped object hovering below their planes above the Pacific Ocean in 2004. According to Fravor, he lowered his plane to inspect the object and saw that it had no visible rotors, wings, or exhausts. It began to move upward toward his fighter jet. Then it vanished and reappeared a few seconds later, 60 miles away. They also experienced malfunctions in their reading, in their technology bits started malfunctioning on the planes at this time, but I don't remember the details. Fravor stated that the technology that he encountered that day defies logical explanation. The way that the aircraft maneuvered should not be possible within the constraints of our current understanding of physics. Fravor claimed, The technology that we faced is far superior to anything that we had, and there's nothing we can do about it. Nothing. The ultimate takeaway that I got from the hearing, in the end, was that there clearly is a threat to the national security of the U.S. because of these aircraft, and we have a responsibility to be aware of these activities so that we can act appropriately. The lawmakers all seemed kind of split on whether or not they fully believed the claims of the witnesses. And any talk about the non-human biologics or like alien stuff, people were really, really skeptical of, as you can imagine. But most people there were indeed in agreement that regardless of what it is, whether it's aliens or not, the information about them needs to be available. And if it's not aliens, then why is the federal government being so fucking stingy and bogarting all the fucking info? Making it weird, right? It has to be something that... I mean, I understand national security, like, you're gonna need some clearance or whatever, but, like, if it's directly affecting pilots, then they need to at least know enough, you know, to not get themselves killed, right? Especially if it is a national security threat, because if it is, like, an enemy, in quotes, enemy country having like crazy advanced aircraft technology, then anyone who runs into them could be the one that they decide to open fire on. So it doesn't make any sense for them to not be letting anyone at all have this fucking information. Know what I'm saying? I don't know. So that was what the important parts of the hearing. Let me know what you think. Did you guys watch it? I know some of my friends watched it, or at least parts of it. I'm not sure if, like, there was a handful of things that the witnesses said could have been interpreted differently, depending on who you are. If anyone interpreted any of those things differently from how I seem to have, let's fucking talk about it. Yeah, let me know your thoughts, and after I take this break to urinate, I will jump into a very interesting tale about a UFO sighting. You know, for some reason, I'm just not loving this camera angle today. I don't know. It's the same camera angle I always use, isn't it? Is it bugging me? Does it seem different? Is it just the light? Am I just not accustomed to daylight? Is that fascinating? Fascinating. Anyway, I would like to talk to you about what is often referred to as the Falcon Lake Incident. I don't know why I have my head so close to the screen. This is really, really... Does it make it seem more intense? I speak very, very closely to the microphone. Does that seem intense? I'll stop. I'm sorry, guys. I hope that wasn't, like, loud. I always forget about how microphones work. I'm new to this. Let's see. The Falcon Lake Incident. One of the most extensively documented cases of an individual interacting with an unidentified flying object occurred in Canada in 1967. Oh. The incident is widely renowned as one of the most credible UFO incidences, and still there is no verifiable explanation for what took place. The reason that I chose this particular case to discuss is that there's so much documentation from reputable official organizations. This one has been investigated by various Canadian authorities, including the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Belch, Jesus, Royal Canadian Air Force, the Department of Health, Department of National Defense, and American authorities, including the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization and the United States Air Force, as part of the Condon Committee. I've never heard of that, so just take my word for it. I'm taking my notes word for it. And best of all, the witness in question never acted weird and insisted that it was aliens. Up until his death in 1999, Stefan Mikulik truly believed that what he saw was indeed of this world, just really fucking weird. I tend to trust skeptics more when it comes to things like this, because I am all too aware of the ways that the human mind likes to convince itself of things that it wants to believe. If you want to believe that aliens are among us, through no fault of your own because it's just how our brains work, you will see evidence of those aliens often. Because of this natural human silliness, I like it when people can't prove the way that they can't prove what they themselves believe, no matter how hard they try. That's the energy I strive for. So, like, I might explain that a little bit better. Y'all know the scientific method, yeah? Like, the whole point of there being a scientific method is you have an idea. You think something is a way, right? And then you try tirelessly to disprove what you believe is going on. And then after you've exhausted all of the ways you can think of to disprove your idea, then it's a valid hypothesis because it couldn't be disproven. So that's kind of what I do in my fucking research and my podcasts anyway, because I believe that there's weird shit going on. And so I'm studying that shit as extensively as possible and trying to disprove it, which I unfortunately end up doing very often. There's a rational explanation for most things, and fucking goddamn Occam's razor, right? But eventually I'll find something that I can't disprove or rationalize. And honestly, at this point, it's the aliens. The aliens is the first thing that I can't discount, you know? Obviously I can't discount things like the Fae and ghosts and stuff overall, but most of the stories that I hear about them, I can be like, dude, rusty pipes, you know? Shit like that. Other than that one that I saw throw my painting off the wall, that didn't make any sense. Maybe I was tired. See what I mean? You know? Anyway, so that's my method. And that's why I trust this guy so much, because his story stayed mostly straight, you know? He was disoriented, which I'll get to, but other than that, his story was straight, and he kept being like, no, I really think it's some fucking Yankee pilot, like, I ran into. I don't know why you didn't want help. You'll understand better. Anyway, this guy, Stefan Michalak, was born in Poland in 1916. He joined the Polish military when he came of age and served as a junior officer during the start of World War II. In 1948, he fled Poland via the Allied occupation forces and found himself in Canada. He was a Polish immigrant to Canada. Whoa, my notes are jumbled. Yes, and then as an immigrant to Canada, he worked as a farmhand on a small farm in Saskatchewan, while he worked for about a decade to get his wife and family over to Canada with him and out of Poland. Okay. Farmhand. Worked there for a decade as he was struggling to get his wife and family over to Canada with him. There we go. After they were all reunited, he and his family moved to Winnipeg, where he got a job as an industrial mechanic. He also worked as a millwright on hydroelectric projects in northern Manitoba. So, needless to say, this guy was a bit of a badass and he knew his way around a machine. This is important later. Michalak got super into prospecting and geology while he was living in Canada as well. He became a pretty hardcore rock hound as a hobby over the years, and one of his favorite things to do was go out into the woods and look for shiny stones. Me too. I don't know shit about them, I just like them because they're shiny. Most weekends, especially on long weekends, he would travel out to a place called Falcon Lake in Manitoba. According to one source, after exploring the area in the past, he staked a claim to a little section near the lake so he could come out and prospect for precious metals whenever he wanted. He knew of multiple veins of quartz as well as veins of gold and nickel in the area. These are what he was poking around for on May 20th, 1967. According to Michalak's account, he was following a nice vein of quartz through the rock near the lake when he was spooked by a flock of geese. These geese were honking up a storm and freaking out even more than is normal for geese. Geese, in my experience, are extremely dramatic. So you can imagine what a ruckus these guys were causing for him to think it was a little extra. He looked up to see what the fuck these birds were on about, to see two weird-looking objects hovering about 150 feet away from where he was standing. He described them as being cigarette-shaped, with humps in the middle, like camels. Cigarettes with humps. Camel. Our guy assumed that... I hope someone thinks that's funny. I think I'm funny. Our guy assumed that the things he was seeing were some kind of experimental aircraft from America. America does some weird shit all the time, you know? So, a fair assumption, I say. One of the floaty boys landed on a big rock outcropping nearby, and changed shape into something like a disc. At this time, the other hovered around for a little while and then flew off. Mikulak, being a nerd, had a notebook and writing utensils in his bag. One source mentions that he enjoyed sketching landscapes and rocks that he found while he was out dicking around in the woods. So, yeah, he had that. He took out his notebook and pencil and quickly sketched the aircraft that he was looking at. He spent about half an hour on the sketch, so the thing was just chilling there for quite a while. And when he finished, he decided to go poke around the thing and see if maybe whoever was in there needed some help. The first thing he looked for, while walking around the vehicle, was any kind of identifying symbol to let him know what it was, or who it belonged to. Any kind of insignia, marker, etc., to show it was American or Canadian or a private machine versus a military one. Anything at all like that. Year, make, model, you know? After looking around a bit, however, he never saw anything like that. Nothing at all. He noticed that the object didn't have any seams anywhere, and the metal surface was completely smooth like colored glass. So, I am belchy today, I apologize. So, without any seams, it looked strange. You know, there was no sign that it had been welded or even bolted together. Now we can 3D print metal parts, but in the 60s, nothing big and metal was totally free of weld marks or seams, you know? The boy was quite familiar with big chunks of metal, because, like I said, he was an industrial mechanic, so he thought this was pretty fucked up, you know? He described the thing as being about 34 feet long and 15 feet tall. I doubt that he measured with a tape or anything, but this was his best guess as to the size. It was pretty big. You get the point, right? So while examining the freaky disc boy, Mikulak saw it change color between gray and red. He also noticed a golden-colored aura surrounding it that made it look quite a lot like superheated steel, especially with the reddish color. One odd thing that he mentioned later as well was a powerful smell of sulfur and warmth around, like warm air, around the craft. He heard mechanical sounds coming from it as well, much like the whirring of a motor and a hissing sound like that of pressurized air being expelled. Mikulak eventually saw what appeared to be an open door on one side of the object, from which bright lights were visible. He claims to have heard what sounded to him like muffled voices having a conversation, but he couldn't make out anything that was being said due to the loud sounds of machinery overpowering the voices. The voices sounded human to him, and there were two distinct tones, as if there were two people talking to one another. As I mentioned before, he believed that the aircraft was some weird American project, so he figured it was American pilots in the vehicle, and he called out to them. He said something like, "Hey, you Yankee boys, need any help?" But in a very strong Polish accent. He figured that they were having mechanical troubles, and he wanted to see if he could help get them up and running again. However, they suddenly stopped talking when he called out, and they never resumed their conversation. He figured maybe they weren't actually American, so he tried to get their attention speaking in Polish. Still, he was met with silence. Luckily, he was a worldly lad and he knew more languages to try. He tried communicating in Russian, then in German, and still received no response or confirmation from the occupants of the vessel. When I first heard this story, I was impressed that he knew so many different languages, but after learning more about our protagonist, it's not so surprising. Being Polish and in the military, I guess it's not super weird for him to speak multiple languages, you know? The US is actually the freaks for not knowing multiple languages. And I just reminded myself that I need to download Duolingo on my new phone because I was learning Norwegian and Navajo, and I got a new phone, and it's shiny and not broken. But I did not get Duolingo on there yet. Thank you, me. Anyway, he kept trying to talk to them, even though they weren't responding, and he walked up toward the door, putting on a set of welding goggles to help dim the bright light of the seemingly hot steel in front of him. Or what seemed to be hot steel, I suppose. And when he got to the door, however, the craft seemed empty, and as he walked away, 3 panels slid in to seal the craft shut. And when he touched it, he found it so hot that the fingertips of his gloves melted. He says that it then turned counterclockwise, revealing a panel with a grid of holes that emitted a blast of heated gas which hit him in the chest, blew him backward, and set fire to his clothing. He says he immediately tore the burning clothes off as the craft flew away. Wah, wah, wah. Mikulak claims that after the interaction with the aircraft, he was disoriented and nauseous, and he ended up barfing. He tried to return to his room at Falcon Motor Hotel. A highway patrol officer from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Constable G.A. Solotki? Sounds right to me. Spotted Mikulak and assumed that he was drunk, but he didn't smell any booze on him. Solotki's report indicated that he offered to help him return and seek treatment at Falcon Beach, but Mikulak wasn't interested. However, according to Mikulak, Solotki was dismissive of his situation and refused to offer him any help. According to Mikulak, he ended up safely getting back to his hotel, despite the dismissive cop, a cab, and he talked to the owner about finding a doctor. He was told that the local doctor wasn't around. He then rested and called his wife to tell her what happened, and that he would come home on a Greyhound. When he got home, he sought medical attention at the Misericordia Health Center for his injuries and was admitted to the emergency room. He experienced burns on his chest and stomach, which validated his claims of being hit by what he suspected was an exhaust panel. A grid-like pattern of raised sores from his burns showed up on his body. He suffered from prolonged bouts of diarrhea, headaches, blackouts, and continued weight loss. Eventually, he sought further medical help from the Mayo Clinic. The Mayo Clinic's report determined that he was of sound mind. His physical condition following the event was allegedly consistent with radiation poisoning. Radiation poisoning is more fancily called acute radiation syndrome, a collection of health effects that are caused by being exposed to high amounts of ionizing radiation in a short period of time. Symptoms can start within an hour of exposure and can last for several months. Early symptoms are nausea, vomiting, and loss of appetite. Sound familiar? In the following hours or weeks, initial symptoms may appear to improve before the development of more symptoms, after which you either get better or you die. ARS involves a total dose of greater than 0.7 GY or 70 RAD. That generally occurs from a source outside the body, delivered within a few minutes. GY is the symbol for what's called gray, which is just the unit of measurement used to determine doses of ionizing radiation. It's defined as the absorption of 1 joule of radiation per kilogram of matter. But tests administered at Pinawa, Manitoba, following the incident came up negative, meaning they tested him for radiation and there was none. Mikulak allegedly lost 13 pounds following the incident, with his lymphocyte count drastically falling to near lethal levels. A lymphocyte is a type of white blood cell in the immune system of most vertebrates. They include T cells, B cells, and innate lymphoid cells. Essentially, they're the major cellular components of the adaptive immune response. T and B cells recognize specific non-self antigens, and once they identify an invader, the cells generate a response tailored to eliminate the pathogens or pathogen-infected cells. They do your immunity. They're the immune system, to simplify. He continued to suffer from intermittent reappearances of his burns, and its effects would never fully subside by the time he died in 1999. He came forward with his story to the Winnipeg Tribune, which published his account under the title, "I Was Burned by UFO." Michalak subsequently published his accounts in a manuscript titled My Encounter with the UFO, which was published in 1967 by Osnova Publications in Polish and retold by Paul, can't pronounce that name, Pihichyn, who had translated the account to English. So when he died in 1999, he reportedly still believed that the UFO was an experimental aircraft, and with reports stating he never claimed that the craft he witnessed was of alien origin. He grew weary of the intense media scrutiny on his personal life, and he shied away from interviews during the initial surge of, media coverage. When he wrote a manuscript, he tried to after writing his manuscript, he tried to break off contact with the outside world in general, because it was driving him fucking nuts. And, for one thing, he never said it was aliens, so everyone was coming after him and his family, calling him a fucking kook, calling him what's the word for it? A grifter, saying that he made it up, or that he somehow made it up as a means to scare people away from prospecting in that area so he could keep all the mineral veins for himself. People said he was looking for fame or money or something like that by claiming he saw an alien UFO or whatever, but he never even said that it was an alien. He thought it was the US military, and he was like, dude, someone just what was it? Because you kind of fucked me up. So that sucks. The turmoil surrounding the event caused Michalak to experience domestic problems, with his wife Maria struggling to aid him following the traumatic event. They continued to suffer harassment his whole life, and his son, Stan, was bullied at school. Maria continued to voice reluctance in coming forward about the story with the media, and the son, Stan, worked with people interested in the sighting following his father's passing. I believe his son, Stan, wrote a book, and I will at least upload a photo of the cover of it for you. So, now we get into the investigation of it. On with the bullshit. So, following the publication of Michalak's ordeal, he was questioned by the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP. All right. Representatives on the Royal Canadian Air Force, and other representatives of government agencies, and not to mention members of the public media who wanted to hear the account. A lot of people were initially very dismissive, but over time, the search of the area for any indication of what had happened did intensify, and there were helicopters aiding combing the area. Other agencies were aiding in the investigations, including the Department of Health. As you can imagine, if there's something out there that made someone this fucking sick, they need to know about it. The Department of National Defense. There were American teams, the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, and the United States Air Force were part of the committee. He himself wasn't able to help at first because he was sicker than shit, and then later on, when he started recovering a little bit, he tried to help with the search of the area. The main thing is they were looking for the landing site, and they wanted to go over it and check for any signs of what happened, any bits of radiation, whatever. any fucking clues as to what actually happened here. Initial conclusions, what most people believed at the time. At first, initial conclusions assumed that Michalak was hallucinating as a result of being drunk. I fucking hate that so much. The investigation by the USAF ended inconclusively, but the RCMP and Canadian Armed Forces report emphasized their inability to explain the physical effects, the burns, and what they eventually found was a burned circle of vegetation at the site. So, like, yeah, he might have been drunk and, like, hallucinating something, if he had been, which I argue. Something weird still happened. Like, what? There's a giant burned circle on the rock surface. He seems to have something like radiation poisoning. He's got this weird grid of sores on his stomach. Pictures will be... I'll show you pictures. Jesus, though, right? A substantial number of publications from the ensuing investigations are on the public record, which include the RCMP and RCAF reports on the case held within the National Archives. I found those. I'm going to look at the RCMP report in a second. And also the Mayo Clinic correspondence between the physicians who attended Michalak. Those are on file as well. And I think that those are probably the clincher, you know, because they're very reputable medical organization and they have documented evidence of something weird fucking going on with Michalak after that, you know, the burns, you know, everything. Analysis of the itchy throat. No dead air. I'm gonna make a lot of noises while I take this drink. Did that make it better? Did you like that? Okay. Analysis of the site yielded unusual results, including the 15-foot circle of burned vegetation in the site Michalak claimed the landing occurred. And there was a presence of highly radioactive elements within the soil samples and the clothing that he had removed. Metal that was superheated was found to have been melted into cracks of rock and exhibited high levels of radioactivity. The anomalous readings were eventually uncovered to be due to a radium vein, which was near the site. So, at first they were like, holy shit, there is radioactivity here, what in the world? And then they realized that there was a vein of radium in the ground, and that's what they were picking up on. But there was also, I hope I can find a photo of it. It was in the, they showed it in the episode of Unsolved Mysteries about this, which is where I first heard of it. There was a chunk of metal that was like super radioactive that they found there, and it was all like kind of burnt up and bent, weird looking. And they took it, and it's perfectly safe to hold now because all half-life, whatever. But at the time, there was just a super radioactive chunk of metal sitting there that they took. I think that's weird too. If all of the radiation was supposedly just from like minerals in the ground, what about this fucking chunk of metal? Is it? I don't know. There are things to question. Let's see. Skeptics claim that the burns that he suffered were the result of an accident caused by him being drunk. Like he got drunk and tried to make a campfire or something and burned the shit out of himself. What would he have been doing with a fire? He had a hotel room. He wasn't gonna like build a fire and camp. Why would he just start a fire out there while he was poking at rocks? I imagine he brought a sack lunch, like a sandwich. And there's a restaurant. There's like a food place in the hotel. Yeah, so he's out there fucking stumbling ass drunk, half a fifth in it? In the middle of the woods? Building a fire? In what world? He fought Nazis. The disrespect. And they claim that his claim was in order to hide that he was drunk in the woods with fire. Like he was embarrassed. Like, really? I don't care how proud you are. If you're getting that schnockered in the woods alone and burning yourself, you're going to be like, you're not going to be, I mean, you might be embarrassed by it, but like, you're going to be like, yeah, I fucked up. Hey, wife, I need to come home because I got fucking hammered and I fell in a fire. You know, he's not going to make up some shit about aliens. And once again, literally, he never said it was aliens. He never believed that it was aliens. He thought it was some weird military shit. So fuck these guys, I say. I don't know, you can disagree with me all you want, but you'll be wrong and an asshole. Okay, in reporting the incident, Mikulik would potentially dissuade any competitors from prospecting in his site. I mentioned that. The subsequent frenzy by the public and media caused the reverse effect, however, with tons of motherfuckers just descending on the site like ravenous wendigos. The pieces of melted radioactive metal were purported by skeptics of the case to have been planted following the incident to solidify the hoax. So, you know the chunk of metal that I was describing? A lot of people believe that someone brought it there and like planted it to make his account more believable. And I think it was on the episode of Unsolved Mysteries, actually, they talk about that. They're like, it's possible, it's very likely that someone did that, but there's no way in shit that it was Mikulik himself. Him himself. So, I don't know, maybe. Let's see. John B. Alexander, writing in the Journal for Scientific Exploration, states that some of Mikulik's, yeah, I totally said his name wrong there, Mikulik's long-lasting effects, including the skin lesions, which he claimed to be due to his exposure to the exhaust blast, were a result of an allergic reaction. Alexander highlighted the inconsistencies within his testimony in regards to the event. I don't think an allergic reaction can do that, you know? Anyway, I'm Team Mikulik here. And now, the RCMP report. I found the RCMP report, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police report from the incident, and I'll post a link to it in the description of the episode for you to look at. I didn't go through the whole thing. If I'm being quite honest, I got bored. So, according to the report itself, they kept trying to get Mikulik to go with them to the site between May 26th and May 30th, but he didn't feel well enough to make the trip. So they had him sketch them a picture of the terrain in the area. They got the use of a helicopter and started searching on May 31st. A search of the area was conducted by air, and they also searched on foot but couldn't find a flat piece of rock that fit the description Mikulik provided. They decided to convince Mikulik to come with them next time, and he agreed when they returned to his home and asked. They went together to Falcon Beach on June 1st. They used the helicopter again, but Mikulik said that wasn't going to work because the terrain looked totally different from above and he wouldn't recognize any of the landmarks. They commenced ground search. Mikulik seemed to be wandering aimlessly through the bush and didn't really appear to know where he was going. His excuse was that he claimed when he was prospecting, he followed the quartz veins in the rock facings and didn't really pay any attention to where he was going. He seemed very upset with himself because of how difficult it was for him to find the place in question. They never found it. Mikulik went home, and on the 2nd, the officers went back out and once again found nothing. So they ended the search completely in mid-afternoon of June 2nd. The cops made an inquiry on May 25th to find out if Mikulik was in the Falcon Motel on the night of May 19th. Like, they literally don't believe him about any of it, so they have to inquire. And if he may have consumed any alcohol while staying there. On May 26th, they received a call and was advised that the manager of the cafe room at the Falcon Motel said that Mikulik stayed in the motel that night and had had about 3 bottles of beer in the beverage room. He left the motel, then came back a couple hours later and had 2 more bottles of beer. He was not intoxicated when he left, and he never bought liquor. At about 3 or 4 o'clock the next day, Mikulak approached someone and told her that he needed a doctor. She referred him to the RCMP detachment. Mikulak later returned to the motel and asked to call Winnipeg. Everyone that he approached on that day felt as though he was acting intoxicated, but no one could smell any liquor on him. When asked, Mikulak denied having any beer to drink on the night he was at Falcon Beach, and he said that he seldom drank beer at all. If anything, he would have gotten wine, he said. The report states that Mikulak's story and the stories of a few of the people who claim to have seen him while he was at the motel don't align. There are several small points that oppose the stories of different people, including the time someone saw him arrive, being earlier than his bus would have gotten to Falcon Beach in the first place. The main discrepancy is that a worker in the beverage room insists that he positively identified Mikulak, and he definitely had some beers there that night. But Mikulak firmly denies this, even when pressured. The other discrepancy noted in the report is simply that he was unable to find the supposed landing spot of the aircraft, despite being very familiar with the area. Yeah, so those are the main discrepancies, the main things that the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, those guys, those are what made them not believe him at first. So he says he didn't drink at all. Other people know that he drank a little bit. The timing, the people at the hotel had to have been lying about when he showed up because the bus schedule's verifiable, so he wasn't there when they said so. So in that sense, you can't necessarily trust their testimony either. And that's the whole shit, like fucking human testimony, human witness, eyewitness, anything is so unreliable because our brains are stupid. Like even when people think they're telling the truth, we often aren't. And so it's impossible to figure anything out by that alone. So, memories are fallible. That shit I said earlier about cognitive dissonance and what's that one word? Confirmation bias, that one. Confirmation bias, cognitive dissonance, memory issues. Like that, those seem to be the biggest things that fucking make him, I don't know, that the cops thought made him unreliable. So there is that. What else? I feel like I had a little bit more information for you that I didn't type up. Let me think. BRB. Well, turns out that's about all I got. So, as far as Stefan Mikulak's story goes, what do you think? Because it's one of the most reputable stories I've personally ever heard about a UFO fucking sighting, or like, and especially with the intensity of him being next to it and going up to it and hearing voices in it, you know? Because a lot of the time when you hear about UFOs or whatever, like, no one gets that close, for one. And if they do, there's no, I don't know. Sometimes I get the image in my head that they're being remotely piloted or something. Like there's never anyone actually in there. Or like they're drones, possibly. Or, I don't know. Lots of sightings, but never any open ones or aliens. And I just really don't believe that having a few beers would make someone get a grid-shaped burn on their guts. You know? Corn, quit fucking around. I don't know. It's weird. And there's, yeah. Okay, I think I probably said all of the stuff. What do you think? Are there, I want to know if you have any other ideas of cool alien or UFO interactions that you think are equally or about as or more or, you know, credible or, you know, harder to disprove than normal, that I should look into. Because that one really stuck with me. I remember, when was it? It was like early on in the panorama that I started rewatching all of the Unsolved Mysteries again. And I saw it on there and I was like, oh, that's weird. But everything that I see on Unsolved Mysteries, I take with a grain of salt. or like a grain of salt with a lot of it's very stupid. It's wonderful, but anything supernatural or paranormal or whatever that they have on there usually is a little bit silly. And I'm like, honey, that wasn't as weird as you think it was. But this one kind of stuck with me. And then, what was I doing? Oh, yeah. I was working, and I put on a podcast so I didn't get bored. And I was listening to And That's Why We Drink. They're amazing if you like paranormal stuff and silliness. I've shouted them out before. They had an episode on this, and that was what stuck with me the most, because they went into a lot more detail, I guess, and they made it funny, so I remembered it more. But I couldn't for the life of me remember what the event was referred to historically, or how to look it up, or the name of the guy, or anything at all like that, or even where it was. So I was watching the hearing, and I was like, ooh, I'm doing an alien episode while it's hot. Get some attention. Everyone pay attention to me. And also, this is something that I know a lot about. An area of expertise for me, if you will. And I was like, ooh, what was that one? What was that one story that made me go, ooh, shit, what could that have been if not aliens? And so what I did, honestly, I went to That's Why We Drink's website, found a list of the episodes, and just kind of guessed which one. And it said the Falcon Lake Incident or something like that. And so I just Googled that, and I was like, there we go. That's it. Sorry if that scared anyone. I shouldn't clap next to a microphone. That would have made me jump 3 feet in the air. I apologize. Maybe beep. Maybe I'll mute that if I can. I'm a terrible video editor and audio editor. I have no idea what I'm doing here. Anyway, so that's how I figured out that and found that again, and that was a lot of fun for me. You know, crop circles? It's like almost every crop circle incident has been proven to be a motherfucker with some ropes and a board. Right? That's what I heard last. Might have to look into that and see if I've been misled. I was watching, I don't remember who it was. It was a podcast that I found talking about the UFO hearing, and one of them mentioned that something about society, largely pushed by the government probably, makes us really, really dismissive, like too skeptical. Like, we become dismissive of anyone who says anything that seems kind of outlandish or too interesting, you know? We're like, okay, tinfoil hat. And I think that I might be an example of that. I am very... Well, to be fair, I've known a lot of individuals who are who think that literally everything is like a demon, or it happened because of some supernatural force or whatever. And I think that thinking everything is like that all of the time takes away the I don't know, takes away the magic from it. Because sometimes a bird is just a bird. And sometimes the bird lives there because it's its natural habitat. And it's probably not a god speaking to you, you know? And if it was every time, it wouldn't be as special when it was. You know what I'm saying? So I am a little bit wary of... It depends on how people present the information or the idea, you know, whether or not I'm a dick, or my mood, whether I've eaten yet that day, how much I slept. Anyway, I think I've rambled quite enough. Was there anything I wanted to leave you with? Not so much. I think I have noticed, I feel like the people who watch the shorts are not the same people that watch long-form videos. I appreciate every single one of you, whether you're here for my doofiness in my shorts or if you're here for my smarty pants business on here. My smarty pants business is a little bit more important to me, but it's good just to feel appreciated regardless. I will post all of my sources down below for y'all. There's a lot of them this time. I wanted to make sure I wasn't fucking saying anything stupid, you know? Thank you more than my butt to my patrons. I will shout you all out probably next time. I always forget. I'm a butthole. I will post my silly like bloopers and outtakes on Patreon for you. I have a Patreon if you want to give me $1 or more than that to help me be alive. And that's patreon.com/backalleyalchemist. I have an audio-only version that's just my podcast on all of the podcast things, also called Back Alley Alchemist, as you might imagine. If you want to see short-form videos of me being a doof in my day-to-day life, my TikTok is Alley Alchemy. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to contact me at my email, which is backalleyalchemist.podcast@gmail.com. Otherwise, later, and go fuck yourself.